So Unit 10.1, Part 1 and 2. This is Part 1, so you can label it right here. This was supposed to be over the weekend. Like I told you, the country town from whence I am from does not cooperate, or everyone and their dog was on the one broadband width of internet there. So I kept posting it, it kept rejecting it. So, yep, you guys are free. You got a freebie of a 12-minute video. So, this unit is titled Totalitarianism. This is the time period of 1920 to 1940. Remember, I like to go thematic, so some of the chronology is going to overlap. We are very, very close to the end, you guys. Like, we are so close. We're up to the 1940s in this unit. Like, we're going to be flying through World War II. We'll be done with curriculum next week and just have your movie to work on and just review. Please remember, and I want this to be on the podcast for those that are absent, I have a ton of review books. I am more than happy to lend them to you, let you photocopy them, lend out the discs as long as you sign out for them so I get them back. So if you were feeling like the comprehensive study guide I made you and the study guide over women was not enough, and you've been to the College Board and you've taken the practice exams there, I can show you how. I have a plethora of material, so please let me know if you're stressing out about not having enough study material. Anyway, we're very close to the end. This is going to be 1920s to 1940s, as I said. So, totalitarianism, this is where we're getting Stalin and Hitler and Mussolini, definitely moving into World War II. And so how this happens, we're going to start with totalitarianism versus conservative authoritarianism. And so these two things are different. We're going to start with conservative authoritarianism. This is kind of like the anti-democratic governments. These are kind of like those absolute monarch governments that we talked about. Examples would kind of be like Louis the 14th, Peter the Great, Frederick the Great, Catherine the Great, Metternich. These are like our conservatives. So that is what conservative authoritarianism is. It's the traditional form of anti-democratic government in Europe. And so when we just finished that age of democracies, this is kind of like, it's against those democracies, but it's not totally totalitarianism yet. So, conservative authoritarianism, these regimes are going to seek to prevent major changes from undermining the existing social order. A really simple way of saying that is conservatism. Okay, they're conservative. They don't want anything to change. Most people went about their lives and were more concerned with local affairs that directly affected them rather than national affairs. So they're more concerned about what's going on within their own country. It's a kind of a hands-off method. Popular participation in government was forbidden or severely limited. So this is one of the ways it really differs from totalitarianism. Totalitarian leaders like Mussolini or Hitler want their people to be involved as long as they're supporting them, right? But they want you to be hands-on. They want, like, the youth of Germany to rise up. And, you know, you see the kids, the pictures of the little kids, the youth of Hitler. Like, that totalitarianism wants that. Conservative authoritarianism wants you to just mind your own business and let them handle the affairs of the government. So this is a stark contrast to 20th century totalitarianism, where people were expected to participate. And we're going to talk in more detail, like Stalin's 5-year plan in Russia and Hitler's youth, where total participation is required. So conservative authoritarianism is also going to limit in power and in objectives. It usually sought the status quo, mainly because it's going to lack the modern technology at this time period that we're going to see with the new totalitarian governments. I mean, the conservative authoritarians, like our old absolute monarchs, they didn't have anything that was going to like bug your phone to see if you were planning like anarchist activity. We're going to see that with totalitarianism they are, and those secret police, and you wake up and people are just missing, and you know where they are, but you don't really want to know where they are, kind of thing. Like somebody knocked on the door, where'd Daddy go? Like, yeah, he was talking on the phone about some Stalin participation at a meeting, and Daddy's gone, and I'm pretty sure he's not coming back. So we don't have all of that with our conservative authoritarianism. We're going to see conservative authoritarianism revived after World War I because it's going to become more, just like it becomes more democratic after World War I, especially in less developed Eastern Europe and in Spain and Portugal. Only Czechoslovakia is going to remain democratic. So we're going to see that people after World War I are going to kind of be like, I want that conservative, like, stuff back. The Great Depression in the 1930s is going to end various levels of democracy in Austria, Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, Estonia, and Latvia. And so we're going to see conservative authoritarianism come in. On the other side of that, we're also going to see totalitarianism come in. As it says, totalitarianism, total control. And part of the way that totalitarian governments got total control is that they have new technologies that make it possible to observe what everybody's doing. You have the radio, you have the automobile, you have the telephone. So if you have the automobile, you can go out and like observe your people that are kind of far out in the country much more quickly. You can be hands-on. You don't have to wait for people to report back to you. You have the radio to get transmission straight to the government. You have the telephone and taps that can tap the telephone. So governments could wiretap telephone lines to spy on suspected dissenters. This is kind of like that Big Brother thing, like who's listening, who's watching. And so you became very fearful of like doing anything against your government. We're going to see improved communication enabled regimes to coordinate quickly with local officials. So if you did have this little group that decided they were going to have a meeting in a house that was anti-Hitler, you could very quickly radio to somebody and have that house, broken into by the secret police and quickly dispersed. Radio will be a new tool used for propaganda. So propaganda, like promoting, like the Hitler Youth, like make sure your child's raised in the Hitler way. So we're going to see propaganda in this going on, and automobiles and trucks will give regimes increased mobility. Tools used by totalitarian governments: censorship. You will not be allowed to hear any other viewpoint. It's going to be really easy to buy into what your government's telling you because they're going to kill anybody else who says anything different. They're going to censor it. We're going to see that even if you had a different opinion, you are not going to want to state it because those secret police are going to come after you. Indoctrination. So this is where you get, yeah.
So even if you were just like in your house, in the comfort of your own home, you can drop it, you can drop that bomb.
You would not want to because you could be being watched, bugged, tapped. You never knew who was someone listening in for the government. Because one way to kind of make sure that you weren't a target would be to play a spy for the government. And so it became very unsafe to say anything contradictory to the totalitarian regime. Yeah, and you definitely would not want someone in your family to be, whole families would even disown. Like, you're being revolutionary. Like, go. Yeah, get out of here before they come kicking in all of our doors. Indoctrination is where, kind of like blue eyes, blonde hair. Like, this is what's seen as the natural, and we'll see that with Hitler. They're going to make you feel like that is the right thing to be. And that's also a tool used by totalitarian. And terror, this fear, that fear of sitting in your own, like as I was saying, in your own business, in your own home, and that fear of having someone just come in and take away your freedom and or your life because of your viewpoint. So there's virtually no freedom of the press. The press became the organ of the government. Everything that the press gave out was controlled by the government. So if you think about like freedom of the press today, there would be no like slandering this senator or the president or saying something negative about them. Everything that the media had to say came directly from the government. Education was geared to creating loyal citizens of the state while demonizing potential enemies. And so you didn't go to school to become intelligent. You went to school to learn how to be a good citizen of the totalitarian regime and to learn what was evil. So,
doesn't it only take a year?
What?
I mean, so do you not like? I feel like it's only 12 years.
No, it would just be like as you got older, it would be more focused, like especially for young boys. Then it would be like military techniques and things like that. But yeah, this is definitely where you would be demonizing. Like there would be some propaganda books about the Jew or something in Germany. So you learn how to be indoctrinated to what's good and what's evil. That's what schooling was for. Failure to support or comply with government policy often resulted in physical punishment, imprisonment, and or death. And so we're going to see a lot of this as we move forward. But we need to also talk about the difference between two totalitarianism types. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so there's like a lot of population drops. I feel like if they just go
Yes.
killing people, that's
Especially in Russia.
But wouldn't they need people to build the army?
Yeah, they do need people, but also on the other hand, especially when we get to Russia, there is a lack of food and a lot of starvation going on. And so we're going to see that the population will be hurt. Also, if you just think about the loss of life that we just had after World War I mean, we're not talking numbers like that. But the totalitarian regimes would say that the examples being made by those numbers are worth it. to make sure that the government is followed. So there are two types of totalitarian regimes. They are either fascist or communist. Both of these are totalitarian but very different. So it says see the table below, which actually ended up on the other page because I typed a lot of stuff on there. I was hoping to fit it on one page, I guess, when I typed that. So you can put see table on next page. We're going to compare communism in Russia, the Soviet Union, to fascism in Italy and Germany. Okay, so this is going to be the end of part 1. So you can put part 2 at the bottom of this page, of page 3. So we're going to talk just about a couple of these. You have this chart here to help you understand. A lot of people think that, I've heard a lot of students and adults get confused that fascism and communism are the same. The only way that they're really the same is that they're both totalitarian forms of government. But they very much disagree with each other. So this chart is going to help you contrast fascism with communism. So if you look first here, you can put Italy and Germany over the column that says fascism. That's where we're going to follow fascism. And Russia or the Soviet Union. I'm just going to warn you now, I am really bad about saying Russia even during the time period it's called the USSR. My brain just goes there. So we are in the time period of the Soviet Union. We're going to see it changed right here. Just the Soviet Union, yeah. So the first thing you want to notice here is that fascism glorifies the state. So it is very nationalistic. Okay, so fascism is nationalistic. It glorifies the state. Like, I am German. I am British. Okay, or I guess I should say here, I am Italian. I am German. You are the state. Where on the other hand, if you are communist, you're internationalistic. Because remember, workers of the what are going to unite? Of the world. Okay, and that's how I always remember. Communists are going to say that you are the proletariat. You are not an Italian proletariat or a German proletariat. You are a proletariat. You are a worker of the world. They're internationalists. They want to spread it internationally. Fascism is all about, no, we are Germany. We are the best. And we deserve, yeah. So there's a big difference there, so make sure you know that. Russia, or communism, is also, it's not about the leader. It's not so much about one person in charge. It is about, remember, that little elite group. Like Lenin had said, it only takes that elite few to run it. So it's more about the group than it is the individual, where like fascism in Italy and Germany, it's about Hitler. It's about Mussolini. Those are about the leader, not so much the group. It's about their wants. We're going to see that, let's see, so I've covered fascism is about a single party, a single ruler. Communism is about the party. Fascism hates democracy. It condemns it. Rival parties destroy unity is what fascists believe, and man is unable to successfully govern collectively. So fascism is totally anti-democracy, totally against multi-party systems. It should be one party. All other dissenters should be what? Killed. Yeah, taken out. Okay, or they're going to learn really quick what side to say they're on, right? Communism condemns capitalism for exploiting workers. It's the haves versus the have-nots. Although communists are going to say that, business, free business condemns the workers. Okay, so we have communism not liking capitalism, while fascism condemns democracy. Fascism supports the idea of capitalism, but not total free capitalism. Okay, businesses must glorify the state. So there's a big difference here. One hates democracy, the other hates capitalism. Okay, so fascism is going to say capitalism is okay as long as your business supports the state. Hitler's going to say the Volkswagen business is okay because it supports the state, the people's car. He's going to use that. Okay, so as long as it supports the state, you're okay. Communism believes the government should control all means of production, industrial and agricultural, and there should be no private ownership because it's about the group, not about the individual. Fascism is going to have a corporate state that contain the captains of industry become state economic deputies. So fascism is going to promote that. Like, so let's think about, okay, remember the guy who named Big Bertha after his wife, like horrible thing? That would be a captain of industry. Fascism is going to promote that. Like, you should have people that lead it as long as it's for the good of the state. Where on the other hand, communists are going to say the economy is centralized it should be shared by all. Okay, it should be shared by everyone equally. Like, this guy shouldn't be out here busting his tail. We should all share together. Yes, ma'am.
So why are people so against like communism if it's like for like everybody?
Okay, so let's use a classroom example. So let's say that Britain has, on all of her AP preps, gone above and beyond, like wrote the most amazing DBQs ever at the end of those. She didn't just outline it, she didn't just group the text. I mean, she went above and beyond and not only wrote out the DBQs, she went back and revised them until they were a 9. So she gets extra credit for that, okay, because she worked hard and above where she had to go. And so she gets, let's say I would give her a 40 out of 20 instead. She did double the work. So in fascist society, that'd be okay. She's doing for like the better of this class. Our AP score over the board is going to be better because of hers, okay? And a communist, instead of letting her have those points and say, hey, her score is going to help all of our AP score on our average, I would still give her a 20 out of 20, but divide up her 20 points extra credit between all of you. Britton, are you going to work as hard next time on your AP prep? What are you going to hope somebody else does, though?
Someone else does.
Okay, so Jayla, if you know that you're not going to keep any of your extra credit and it's going to go to the whole group, are you going to pick up Britton's weight from her not working that hard on her AP prep to have? No. Okay, so do you start to see where, does that answer, where's that problem would lie? Okay. Okay. Let's see, fascism, like I said, is aggressive nationalism. I put this here twice because it's not just like you're German. It's like you are German, and if you are anything else, what's going to happen to you?
You're out of here.
Yeah, you're out of here.
I mean,
So aggressive nationalism.
so like, if you're not German, you gotta die.
Well, we see how far Hitler take it. Now, some totalitarians aren't going to go that far, but it's very much like, yeah, if you're anything that hinders our state, you got to go. We're going to see communism, spread of communism for the benefit of the world's working class. Make a note here. Communism, even under Stalin, as we see it, it's going to be all about spreading to the rest of the world. They aren't like, let's keep all the good stuff, like the Germans were like, Germany's like, let's keep it all good in our nation. Communists want it to spread across the world. Okay, they want the workers of the world to unite, and they want it to spread. Fascism is going to advocate social Darwinism. Powerful states control weaker ones. Hitler's going to say, yeah, it is because we are the fittest, we should survive, and these other people shouldn't. We're going to start to see that peace becomes a sign of weakness for fascists. Like that you even, like with the Treaty of Versailles, that's got to go because that's a sign of our weakness for Germany. We're going to see that communism condemns imperialism, advocates a world without nationalism with the workers united. So communists are going to say this is really wrong, that carving up of Africa, because that is, again, the haves and the have-nots. So who would be a have-not then in the case of imperialism?
People in this country or whose
Yeah.
country got taken by some other country.
Yeah, and so any of the natives that were living there would be the have-nots. So communism is very against imperialism, while fascists are for it. We're going to see that fascism believes desire for peace shows weakness, like I said. Communism, peace is the ultimate goal. Remember, the communists think that after the revolution and after they lead for a while, what's going to happen? What do communists believe then the world becomes like?
Equal, no
No
more.
government.
Yeah, no government, this utopian communist society, right? Very idealistic. So peace is actually the ultimate goal with communism. They think once all this bloodshed happens, then the whole world, we don't need a government, and it'll be this peaceful sharing of everything. Britain's going to give her 20 points extra credit every time to the whole class so that we all have A's, and everything will be all okie dokie. Fascism, glorification of war. We're going to start to see militarism here. This is Hitler and Mussolini. Like, the greater my army, the more superior my country. This is going to cause problems. Again, we're going to start to see that what was Germany told it cannot do? after World War I. Build up an army, and it is, okay, because fascism. Communism, violent revolution is to bring about the dictatorship of the proletariat. War is not the end, but merely the means. I love that statement. War is not the end, but merely the means. In communism, they'd say the bloodshed's going to happen first, but then it's going to be peace. Fascism, continued warlike situation. Okay? And then finally, fascism is going to emphasize the inequalities among humans. It is going to say someone is better. It's social Darwinism. Someone is fitter. Someone is lesser. Okay? While communism is going to emphasize the perfectibility of society and that mankind is basically good. So two very differing viewpoints. Fascism is going to be like, we got to get rid of those scourgy little people over there. Communism is like, we are all people of the world. Okay? So very idealistic, very like, like almost like Hobbes versus Locke. It's like Hobbes, people are evil and brutish and selfish. And Locke, people are basically good. We can teach them how to be better.
So they both believe it's for like the greater good of their people, but it's like different methods.
Yes. Different methods of total control. Very good. And so there's a chart, handy dandy. You can come back to it anytime you want. We're going to start with communism because we're going to start with Russia here. See, I did it already. Soviet Union, as it's going to be in our lecture, or the USSR. So I'm going to change slides here. If it'll go. Click, click, click. Well, we'll just click here then. Okay, so Russia or the Soviet Union under Vladimir Lenin. So this is post-Bolshevik Revolution. We just finished that. Who won the Bolshevik Revolution, the Reds or the Whites? The Reds. Okay, very good. So Marx, remember Lenin and Marx. Lenin's going to take the Marxist viewpoint but change it a little bit. So we get Marxist-Leninist philosophy. Try to say that 100 times fast, right? Yeah. So I would just want you to write, like here, we're going to get capitalism like on steroids under this Marxist-Leninist philosophy. So the first step of Lenin is going to be giving us this theory of imperialism. So remember, communists think that imperialism is bad because it oppresses the have-nots. Okay, so the theory of imperialism under Lenin is that the imperialism is the highest form of capitalism. So like imperialism is capitalism on steroids, like I just said. Like there is nothing worse than capitalism because it is like not only hurting the have-nots, it's like imprisoning them or enslaving them. Okay, as the search for new markets and raw materials feeds the bourgeoisie hunger for more profit. So it just increases the power the haves have over the have-nots. So conquered peoples, he's going to say, are ruthlessly exploited. And so Marxist-Leninist philosophy is going to be against imperialism. Then we have what is called the new type of party, cadre of educated professionals. So if you remember this, the Bolsheviks, I like to compare the Bolsheviks right here to midwives. So the midwives aren't actually giving birth to the child, right? But they're helping birth the child of communism. So the Bolsheviks were like those that aided in the delivery of communism. That's how I would associate them. And they're going to give us this new type of party, or the cadre of educated professional revolutionaries, to serve development of political class conscious and guidance of the dictatorship of the proletariat. That is just a really fancy way to say, remember Lenin, the elite few will guide us all. That's just a really fancy way of saying the elite few will rule the communist class. Lenin's view, if you remember, this is directly from your other packet, stood in stark contrast to Marx, who did not envision a totalitarian dictatorship from above. Yes?
Okay, so if Lenin is a communist and he's saying everybody should have a fair chance, like there should be no above and below, yet he's saying that an elite few, what makes you elite?
He's going to say what makes you elite are the revolutionaries who are willing to lead the charge.
Okay, but what if it's already communist, so they still have the elite to run things?
Yes.
But they're no longer in the midst of revolutions.
Correct. Right. So this is where he differs from Marx. This is where Lenin and Marx differ. And that's what's underlined right here. Lenin's view stood in stark contrast to Marx, who did not envision a totalitarian dictatorship from above by elites, but rather from below by the workers. So this is Lenin's first big jump away from where Marx was going. Lenin says you have to have this group of elite to help guide. They're like the midwives. The Bolsheviks are like the midwives of the revolution. You need them to help birth communism and to keep it alive. Where Marx would have said it's the workers, it's everyone below that would take care of it. So this is the biggest difference between Marx and Lenin, is that Lenin says you need a top ruling elite. Like Marx, Lenin is going to seek, however, so this is how they're very similar, seek a worldwide communist movement. Marx and Lenin both believe that communism should spread everywhere. So in 1919, we're going to get the Comintern. And this is created under Lenin in 1919. So this is the third time that the communists have created this international party. So therefore, it is called the Third Communist International. And this party's purpose was to serve as the preliminary step of the International Republic of Soviets towards the worldwide victory of communism. So just a fancy way to say they want communism to spread across the world. So at the time period we get like what's called the Red Scare here in the United States. There was a reason to be scared. Their mission statement was to spread communism across the world. People were not just freaking out because they were paranoid. This was the intention of the Third Communist International, was to make communism spread across the globe. Yes, ma'am?
So in some ways, like how communist and fascist countries were super paranoid about democracy or anything non-totalitarian were fearful and paranoid about everything totalitarian.
Very much so. Yeah. It's a very shaky time, especially with the pessimism, if you remember from our age of anxiety, with the pessimism and is there right and all of that floating around, plus this paranoid fear. Big deal. So you really start to see people square off against each other. So goal was to spread communism, so there is probably some reason to be scared. Next, we need to talk about war communism, which we've talked about before, but we need to talk about it in relevance to this unit. So war communism had been instituted by Lenin to help the Reds win during the Bolshevik Revolution. Remember that the purpose was to win the Russian Civil War, and this was the first mass communist society in world history, was the war communism that went on during Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution. And what that really means is that socialization or nationalization of all means of production and central planning of the economy took place. So it means that nothing was left in individuals' hands. Everything was taken by the government during this time of the Russian Revolution. However, the Bolsheviks, in trying to win the revolution, end up destroying the economy. We're going to see massive starvation due to crop failures. They're not growing. So it's kind of like we were talking about, and goes back to your great question, Deja. So why wouldn't this work if the government's controlling everything? Well, if you're a peasant and you know that you're still going to get the same amount of food and you don't get any personal money from working, are you going to work that hard? No. Are you going to worry about trying to work harder and harder and produce more and more food? You're not, because you don't get any harder you work. Okay, and so we're going to see massive starvation due to crop failures and decrease in industrial output. And then, of course, we have that secret police going around, the Cheka, liquidating or killing about 250,000 opponents at this time. So lots of loss during, remember, 15 million people lost in the Russian Revolution. These are the Cheka. Some students asked me if this was similar to the KGB. These are the predecessors of the KGB. Okay, so what is going on then? We are going to see that Lenin becomes challenged. So just like we had those other military rebellions earlier that we've talked about that leaders face, Lenin is also going to face a rebellion. It's called the Kronstadt Rebellion, and it is a mutiny by actual previous pro-Bolshevik sailors. They had been pre-Bolshevik Revolution. And it takes place in March of 1921, and it's called the Kronstadt Rebellion because it takes place at the naval base. This is the name of a city. So the sailors are going to rise up due to this starvation, due to the economy being hurt by war communism. And Lenin, not personally, is going to put them down, but have machine guns take them down, crush them with machine gun fire. The main reason that these sailors, like I said, had rebelled against Lenin is that it was because of the economic disaster and social upheaval of the Russian Civil War. And so Lenin is going to realize really quickly, like, uh-oh, I don't want there to be another revolution against me like the revolution I'm leading against the Russian country right now. And so he realizes he needs to change some things. And so with these problems with war communism, we are going to see Lenin asking himself, how can I make sure that they don't mess up my plan? How can I make sure that these revolutionaries don't shut down my communist government? So he is going to create what is known as the NEP. He's going to institute the NEP, which stands for the New Economic Policy. This has been on every AP exam that I have pulled to pull questions for you guys for all of the years. Every single one has a question about NEP either in the multiple choice or in the FRQ or DBQ. Every single one that I've pulled. So, okay, and what the NEP is it is Lenin's response to the people throwing back at him his war communism. And so it's his economic policy between 1921 and 1928. And what he does with this new economic policy is he seeks to eliminate harsh aspects of war communism, such as central planning, the mass agricultural farms that cause starvation, etc. His response to this is his response to peasant revolts, military mutiny, and economic ruin. And so what he's going to say is, I understand that some of the things that had to go in place to help us win the revolution don't have to necessarily be this harsh. Yes, ma'am?
So this is basically kind of him like
loosening up. Yeah, I think that's a good term for it, a great term for it. This is really his, you ever hear like somebody taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back? This is also called like his step back program. He's like, oh, maybe took 1 step too far, people about to kill me, so it takes a step back. And so how he takes that step back is he implements some capitalist measures. It will allow Lenin necessary step backwards, okay, to keep him from getting overthrown. So this is really the first communist country ever, and what do we see right off the bat?
Not going well.
Yeah, we see some capitalism mixed in. So it definitely is not going like Marx would say, not pure. It's not moving in that towards utopian society. So what he's going to say is that government would not see surplus grain anymore. So if you were a peasant and you made extra grain, then you needed to give to the government, then you could keep it and sell it for your own profit. So I'm pretty sure then Britain would be back to that, oh, I'm going to get my 20 points. I will keep doing my AP's prep for extra, right? And so we start to see the peasants are going to be appeased here. They could sell the grain on the open market, and so profit becomes a motive for them. Small manufacturers were going to be allowed to run their own businesses again. So this is the share versus keep. So now you get to keep some of your profit. Government, however, will still be in control of the big stuff. So just write government still in control of the big stuff, of heavy industry, of banks, and of railroads. They keep all the big stuff, but some of the more private sectors, they allow people to keep some profit. The results of the NEP, of what Lenin does, is the Russian economy is actually going to improve. A little bit of capitalism mixed in with the communism is going to improve Russia. They're going to have more food. Industry and agricultural output would be back to pre-World War I levels. Workers will get shorter hours and better conditions, and they're going to be able to temporarily relax that censorship and that terror because people are happier. Okay. So, Lenin's impact on Russian society. When we usually talk about someone's impact, then that means what's happened to them? They're dead. Okay, so Lenin is actually going to die after not being in charge for too long. We'll talk about that more in just a second. But Lenin is going to have a significant impact on Russian society before he dies. Russia, under his rule, is going to be renamed the Soviet Union in 1922. The actual full name is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR. Nope. No, not anymore. Just for this. Oh, okay. Sorry, I heard it backwards. I thought you asked if they were. No, so they would be called the USSR at this time, or the Soviet Union. The old social structure is abolished, so titles for nobility are ended. We're going to see a loss of influence for the Greek Orthodox Church, which has been in power for quite some time in Russia, or USC now. I keep saying Russia. The USSR. You know what I mean?
Russia, USSR, Russia.
Yeah. Yep. Women are going to gain equality in theory, like on the books. It looks like they have equality, like divorce and abortion and things like that, but they're still not quite an equal status. But in theory, Russians had greater expectation of freedom than they had during Nicholas's regime, during the Tsar's regime, although expectations are going to be later crushed by Stalin. So that's a spoiler alert of who's going to come to power next. It will be Joseph Stalin, whose real name was actually not Joseph Stalin. It was Joseph blah, 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 something, real long name, but he changes it because it literally will translate to the Man of Steel. So he's pretty much like naming himself Superman. Yeah. And a movie I'm going to show you at the end of the week, like one of the best movies ever, is called Joseph Stalin, the Man of Steel. And so I'm going to go through some of this stuff quickly so you can watch it in the movie and understand it. So we will hit that here towards the end of the week. But yeah, his real name isn't that. I can't. It's a lot of consonants and stuff. I can't say it. So he changes his name to Man of Steel. So, a power struggle. Lenin's gonna die. I used to have a really good picture of him, like in a wheelchair, as he got ill. Like he wasn't taken out or assassinated or anything. He got ill. He was in deteriorating health, and then he dies. But he leaves, and this is a pattern of history that needs to change. He leaves no successor. Like, he doesn't say, hey, Leon Trotsky, like, you were my right-hand man, you should take over for me. He leaves it kind of up in the air. So we're going to have these two people starting to fight over it. But before I talk about them, I want to let you know that he becomes a symbol of communism because he really helps birth communism and the Soviet Union. His body is preserved. And and so just like Bentham, he is preserved. I know there's some weird embalming thing they did to him because you can still go visit it. It's in the Red Hall in a square in Moscow, I believe. And it's called the Red Square. I don't know if that's the name of the building or if it's like in a red square. It has a lot of buildings. Okay, I have not been to Russia, so. But you can hear his body right after his death. He becomes a symbol. He wasn't like Bentham that was like, put me on my favorite chair with a wax head and put my head somewhere else. The people make him a symbol. So Lenin didn't really have anything to do with this. And here he is in a more modern picture, still encased in glass. So if you ever, felt the need to go visit his body, you could. But he dies. He leaves no chosen successor. And so we have two people rise up to say, I should be in charge. The first is going to be Joseph Stalin, and he's really going to be more of a realist and believed in socialism in one country. He's less radical than Lenin because he's not going to say like communism for the world. He realizes Russia still has a whole bunch of problems. He's going to say, why don't we just try to get communism right in here and then worry about the rest of the world. So he's less radical than Lenin. And again, Man of Steel. So he's going to be socialism in one country. So he is going to challenge Russia to become like the premier communist nation, the first communist nation, and do it like Marx would want it done. He's going to back off of Lenin's plan of we need to spread it to the rest of the world till we can get it done. He believes that first Russia had to be strong internationally and should deter efforts for an international communist revolution, and sought establishment of a socialist economy without the aid of the West. So we need to make socialism work here first. It's kind of his motto. Leon Trotsky, however, here on the right, we've been talking about him, and he kind of seems like the obvious choice. He was Lenin's right-hand man. He was our brains behind the whole thing. And so you would think he would be the obvious choice. And he is much more Marxist in ideology and believed in a permanent revolution, a continuation of a world communist revolution. So he was much more on par with what Lenin had wanted. He wants to continue to help communism spread across the world in a communist utopia. However, the reason that Trotsky does not get the support of the party is because the leaders felt he was too idealistic. They think that Stalin is much more realistic, like to just try to have communism here.
Yeah, like they're not worried
Yeah,
about
and not spread the rest of the world. And so Trotsky loses some favor here. Although he had been Lenin's, right-hand man and there the whole time, Stalin wasn't there for all of the Red Army stuff. So it's kind of an odd thing. And Stalin is gonna.
Trotsky, like, super old at this point, though.
He's pretty old, but not like couldn't rule old. Yeah, like he could have taken over. Stalin was younger. Stalin actually looks totally different. If you ever get a chance, and if I get a chance to remember, and in the movie you'll see. Yeah, totally looks different as a young man. Like he was kind of like a debonair, like like a tall, dark, and handsome kind of Stalin guy. Yeah. So Stalin is going to gain effective control in 1927. So he gained control in 1927. He'll have total control by 1929. But Trotsky is going to continue to be a thorn in Stalin's side.
So they just had him killed in Mexico?
Well, what he's going to do is he's going to have him exiled to Mexico City. And Trotsky's going to go there, and he's still publishing all of these pamphlets about like how Stalin isn't carrying on what Lenin would have wanted, and if Lenin were still alive, who was the father of communism for the Soviet Union, that he would disagree with what Stalin's doing. And so Stalin then is like, okay, exiling isn't enough. So he sends like this posse down there of guys. And so I imagine that Trotsky's drinking a margarita because, stereotypes make lectures go more quickly. So he's drinking a margarita because it's Mexico City. And one version of this story goes that they come up behind, because they don't just have like little ice machines that you can get ice, so they have to chip ice off, that they come up behind him and he's on the beach with, his margarita, and they stab him in the back of the head with an ice pick. I've also read in another textbook, and I don't know if this is a misprint because it's the only other time I've seen it, and I think it's actually your textbook. Yours or Mary? Yeah, it wouldn't be the first misprint I found in there this year. I think I'm going with a different book next year. But anyway, they say an ice pick, you climb like ice walls, like that. I'm like, what are you doing in Mexico City with like that kind of ice pick? I don't know. So So
honestly, I don't think the TSA was like a thing. So
they could have gotten whatever on whatever place. So I'm just gonna say, for the brevity of the conversation, blunt head trauma with a hole involved.
Like a stabbing.
Yeah, stubbing,
Or if they hit him with something.
Yeah. So either way, he got killed from behind, in his head somehow. So he's out of the picture now, and because Stalin, paranoia, age of anxiety, thinks that Trotsky's going to try to take his power away and has him killed. So the Soviet Union under Stalin, we're going to see that the entire Politburo, if you remember the definition of Politburo, that is the small elite group that rules. Every communist nation who has been or has a Politburo that controls what goes on with the Communist Party. So he is going to get rid of the entire Politburo of Lenin's, and he is going to take absolute control. And so he is going to, anybody that's with Lenin, goes missing, don't know way, he purges them, anyone who's a threat to his power. What?
You said someone raised it.
Oh no, so they went missing. He purges. They're dead. Yeah, they're dead. So what Stalin is going to do is he is going to give his plan. So like Lenin had the NEP, Stalin has what is called the 5-year plan or plans. And so he's kind of like those, like you ever hear people, like especially girls, say, I have my 5-year plan. And this year I'm going to be doing this, and then 2 years, and then five. Yeah, I have a step-by-step. I think it makes people feel better if they feel like, because you could go up there and say what you're really thinking, like, I'm barely going to make it through this election. I don't know what's going to happen next. Or you come up and you say, I have got the next 5
But
years.
if someone from this type of money,
Somebody was like, oh, I got the 5 years.
like, okay,
I'd be like that. I'm like 5 years from now. I probably won't
Somehow it
care.
makes you feel better. Like sometimes I like to think I have a 5-year plan and I'm actually going to stick with like I'm going to save this much money this year and this much next year and invest more in my retirement.
I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. Like
I wasn't for sure, like, if I was gonna
So how we had Lenin's NEP, now we have Stalin's 5-year plan. And so some people also call it the revolution from above. It takes place, the first of his 5-year plan, the first year of it takes place in 1928, and it marked the end of Lenin's NEP. And so people called it the revolution from above because what he does, or what the goals of it is, it's just to increase industrial output by 250%, steel by 300%, and agriculture by 150%. It wants to have, so some lofty goals. These are its benchmarks, what it wants to do. It wants 20% of peasants to be scheduled to give up their private plots and join collective farms. We're going to talk about collectivism in a minute. So just think about this, though. You're one of those peasants that just got a little bit, the MERS, and you had a little bit of land, and if you were the kulaks, you had your own land, and they've only had it for like 60 or 70 years. So you're going to be real hip on giving all your land back to the government after you just got a little taste of freedom? Yeah, we're going to see some problems here. And then they're going to say we are 50 or 100 years behind the advanced countries. We must make good this distance in 10 years. Either we do it or we shall go under. And so he's very much going to say Russia has always been behind and we need to catch up. And it's almost like Stalin is kind of a prophet because nobody's really thinking there's going to be a World War II, but he seems to have this idea that there is going to be, and if we don't get this done, we are not going to survive. And so kind of prophetic here, as we've seen some other things. So results, those benchmarks, like you guys were like looking at the numbers like, wow, that's pretty like lofty. They do. Say steel rises up 400%. The USSR now becomes the second largest steel producer in Europe. Oil production will come up 300%, and we'll see massive urbanization for the first time in Russia. 25 million people will move to the cities because there's now industry to move to. So finally, we've only watched Russia for this whole year and never be caught up. We're going to see some heading up. Yeah, they're going to actually have like some things to talk about. We might actually have like a relevant middle class to talk about in a little bit. So, however, the quality of goods were substandard and the standard of living did not rise. And so this is going to be, they kind of move too fastly. So it's like when you have a product and you're trying to churn it out really fast and you end up being the one that gets that toy on Christmas and the first time you play with it, like the wheel falls off or whatever. That's kind of how this industrialization went for them, but at least it's moved them forward. So I told you that collectivization would be part of this 5-year plan. You might want to write here that this was the biggest deficit or the biggest oops of Stalin's plans, because collectivism is going to cause some problems.
Yeah,
Collectivism. Other things will cause problems too, but this is probably the biggest problem. The biggest, yeah. The goal of collectivism was to take land from peasants. Remember, they've only been able just take it from them. They'd only had this land for about 60 to 70 years, and so it's going to end all private ownership of land in Russia. The purpose was to bring peasantry under absolute control of the communist state. The use of machines in farm production will free more people up to work in industry. The government's going to take back control of production and extend socialism to the countryside. It is going to result in the consolidation of individual peasant farms into large state-controlled enterprises. Yes?
So does that mean they don't make money anymore?
Right.
Okay.
Or they all make no matter how hard you work or what part of the process you're in, you make the same. All shared. Yep.
So does that mean, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Yeah.
So that means that, so basically now it's just like they work for someone instead of having
Yes, yeah. They don't get to decide I want to grow this much more corn so I can sell it so I can buy that like cute donkey over there. Like they don't get any choice anymore. Like you will produce this kind of food, this much of it to send to the city. Yeah.
So I can
Yes.
do everything. Go ahead.
So, like, if they were, like, raising, like, their youth to do all this, would they not use grades in schools? So
Remember,
everybody did the same amount of work, or everybody should do the same amount of work, everybody should
Wasn't schooling about military?
Yeah, schooling more for totalitarian. Yeah, it will become more of a role of becoming what the government wants you to be. So if we need this many farmers, this many of you guys got to go be farmers, and we only need, because you think about to feed that many people, you're gonna need a lot more farmers than doctors. But like you five get to do this, but you make the same.
It wouldn't
Yeah.
be, like, the best science
No.
students would be the
Yeah.
doctors. So it would just be like, well,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, what
Like
you
the first
excel
5
at.
kids in the alphabet are doctors.
Yeah, I mean, they would kind of determine by your skill set. But, and of course, if you we're still being born, if you were a peasant farmer and you're the child of a peasant farmer, yeah. And so we're going to see that farmers will be paid according to the amount of work they did. A portion of their harvest was taken by the government. Eventually, the state was assured of grain for urban workers who were more important politically to Stalin than the peasants. So really this is just an attempt to keep the peasants under control so that new industry he's built up, make sure those people are fed. So we're still seeing the peasants are going to be pushed back down. Collective farmers first had to meet grain quotas before feeding themselves. So yeah, so that would suck. Like, look at all that food, but that was my quota and I'm starving and my kid just starved to death, but I have to send that food to the urban workers. Yeah. So results of this, as you can imagine, we have significantly opposed by the farmers as it placed them in bound situations just like the Mirs they were in. They don't have control or any private land. You remember that the kulaks, who were our wealthiest peasants who actually had their own private land, they're going to offer the greatest resistance to collectivization. Of course you are. If you finally just got some land and you were finally able to plant whatever you wanted and you were finally able to make a profit and now someone's going to come take it away from you, they openly oppose Stalin. And we're going to see that this bourgeoisie of the peasants, the kulaks, are going to be our biggest group killed because Stalin is going to order party workers to liquidate them as a class, to like kill them as a class, just kill them off because they oppose his totalitarian regime. Okay, and so here's a group of the collective farmers, the collective workers, and here is a group of those. You can see like they have pitchforks and stuff raised like a mob. So these are these same collective workers off work marching to go kill the kulaks under Stalin's orders, like because they are indoctrinated, they are told to get rid of them. And so this becomes like the kulaks are going to be taken out. We're going to see 10 million peasants die due to this process. So kulaks and peasants who starved to death. So 10 million die. That's why it's the most costly of his 5-year plans. 7 million will be in forced starvation in the Ukraine. So what I mean by like forced starvation is you have
They're
the
still
food.
working, but
Yeah.
they give all their food.
Yeah, they have the food, like it's right in front of them, and they have to watch it be shipped off. Like it's not that there's no food, just no food for them.
I guess they can
But yeah, oh yeah, they're very heavily supervised. Like no, and it was worse punishment I think almost to not meet your quota than to like starve to death. And so it's pretty bad. So we're going to see 10 million, 7 million. We're going to see agricultural output will be no greater than in 1913. So it's not even working. So you have all these people starving to death and it's not even working. Yes.
Was all this kept secret?
No. Mm-mm.
So I like interesting that he was killing.
Yeah. And they would have just seen it kind of like it's those huge famines we've talked about. Like it was forced starvation, but really we're going to talk about in a minute, even though people are starving, the people loved Stalin. Like, because some things did improve. And so we're going to see that, yeah, some people thought he was the best thing ever. Yes?
Were there limitations on work, like child labor or?
We're going to see improved working conditions a little bit more for urban workers, so not so much for peasantry. Yeah, that's pretty much a sun up to sundown job, and farming always has been. And so there wouldn't have been the same limitations there. Yep. Good questions. So by 1933, 60% of peasant families were on collective farms. Then by 1938, 93%
Where's
of
the
them
other
will.
percent at?
The other percent are the few that have still been able to maintain. They're like, by being too far away for others to get to them, or yeah. Some of them are providing for the collectivism, like maybe they have a certain like trade that they know how to do well as a farmer, and so they haven't been taken out yet. But yeah. So structure of the government under Stalin, we haven't talked about that yet. So here is the structure of power. So it goes from little to biggest. So like a flowchart from like the least powerful part to the most powerful part. So the Central Committee is made up of 70 people. And it was the apex of Soviet power. So about 70 people, so you think of like that committee of elites that helped guide communism. Then next is that Politburo that I said every communist nation has, that is the real elite. It's 12 members that dominate the discussions of policy and personnel within the Communist Party. All people very close to Stalin. And then we have the General Secretary, which is the highest position of power and was created by Stalin. So who do you think our general secretary is then? Stalin. So ever since there's been a general secretary, they have been the leader of the Soviet Union. So Stalin kind of sets that precedent that if you're the general secretary, the leader of the Communist Party or the Soviet Union, then you're also the leader of the Communist Party, then you're also the leader of the Soviet Union. So it goes hand in hand. We're going to pick up because that's the end of part 2. So if you want to write part 3 at number 5, I really love propaganda. I guess that's like, do not just cut that on the podcast. I don't mean I love propaganda. I like to teach about propaganda because some of the posters and stuff are really crazy. When I was in the World War I Museum on Friday for the field trip, I think, Sam, did you get to make a propaganda poster?
I did not.
You did not?
Where did you go? What class?
The Great War Society, our club.
Okay, club.
So I'll show you guys my propaganda poster in my lecture next time because I was there for like 20 minutes. But so that's the end of part 2. I know that's confusing that we did it together, but I combined the 12 minutes you were going to have with this. So please write part 3 at number 5. That is your homework. So when will that video have to be watched by and notes taken?
Friday.
By Friday. You guys are awesome. Remember from the very beginning. And then your proposals, you were going to be given the rest of the time now to talk to me about those.